Bleach Bros Podcast is proud to align itself with Jerky Pro, a beef jerky manufacturer established by military and paramilitary veterans.
Available in 3-ounce or 1-pound bags with great flavors such as honey glazed, teriyaki, red hot, apple cinnamon, original, peppered, sweet barbecue, and if you're ballsy enough, nuclear.
Be sure to use our promo code to get some of the best jerky on the market. Use Bleach Bros 5, all lowercase, to take advantage of this offer today.
Hey guys, this is Sprague with 1080 The Fan, and you're listening to the douchiest guys I've ever met in my life, the Bleach Bros Podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review. Or don't, because they suck.
Welcome into the Bleach Brothers Podcast, guys. Tonight is a great night, B-Word. I am here with you, and we are going to talk about one of my favorite things on the planet. I have always teased. No, that was for something else. That's for Patreon people. If you like Patreon and you want to support us, you will hear why I love carrots and couches so much. So go subscribe for the Hippo Happy Hour because
B-Word needs a new Apple Watch. That's why.
I fucked some things, and B-Word lost his watch. And not in that order. But you can find all that out if you actually go subscribe. But no, really, in all reality, the Ninja Turtles, one of my favorite things of all time. We've talked about it forever. Some of my favorite quotes, some of my favorite things. I think they are the greatest group of superheroes of our generation growing up in multiple ways. And so this whole episode is dedicated to TMNT.
Go Ninja, go Ninja, go.
Okay, so you always quote like most people, the Secret of the Ooze song, Go Ninja Go.
I love the Vanilla Ice version, or I love the Vanilla Ice song more than I like the MC Hammer song.
Well, the MC Hammer song is just This Is What We Do. The other one is not MC Hammer. And that's another thing everybody confuses. TURTLE Power is not an MC Hammer song.
I know that's not an MC Hammer song.
But the main song is Turtle Power.
I get that, but I'm saying Go Ninja, go from Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
So what? Huh? What? Huh?
Are we doing the grumpy old men thing where we're just going to argue back and forth?
What are you trying to say?
Anything?
Like what?
All I said was Go Ninja, go, and you decided to chastise me.
What MC Hammer song are you talking about?
MC Hammer has a song on the
yes, that's what I was saying. That's just,
and I like Vanilla Ice's song better than MC Hammer's song. That's all I was saying.
I guess my point is that there's two main songs for each movie, and more people like the sequel's song better than TURTLE Power.
And I agree with that.
Which is the main song for the first movie. That's all I was trying to say.
And then we bickered on the air. Jacob.
Like grumpy old men, but that's who we are.
Yes.
Like, So,
but I have to be honest with you, man. I'm super excited to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So the reason why this came up for a couple different reasons. Number one, you've been actually petitioning to talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for a while. And while it's not something that I was avoiding, it just happened to time up right because the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles new animated film is coming out soon. And they just released their first trailer. So my very first question to you, because we're going to talk a little bit about that new movie, and we're going to talk a little bit about, some things that are coming on with that movie, with other iterations of the Turtles and whatever. But for our audience, Jake, because I think I'm pretty familiar with this, how were you introduced to the Ninja Turtles?
I'll be honest, I was introduced like everybody else with the cartoon, I think. I will say the original film was the first movie I ever went to the movie theaters to see. I actually thought New Line Cinema, the logo, was two ladders in an alleyway. Not a film strip. I really thought it was like a ladder and then another ladder coming down in an alleyway. That's what I really thought it represented as a kid. Like I was like, oh, that's the New York City street sewer sort of thing. That's really where my brain went. I was so Ninja Turtle-esque. And then I had the original video game, which then led me into the world of why they all have real or just red bandanas only.
Yeah.
Which, as they should, based on the comics. And then later in life, I got into the comics more. So I was introduced to them like most kids our age with the cartoon. That was a great cartoon. Loved it. I still own almost all the seasons on DVD. I think the original movie is one of the greatest films actually ever by Jim Henson Productions. It's one of the greatest comic book adaptions ever. Did a great job because they mixed both worlds. But that's how I was introduced. What about you?
Definitely the cartoon. The cartoon was my first experience with the Ninja Turtles. And ironically, before the movies came out, they had musicals that you could buy on pay-per-view. And I don't remember what they were called.
Like the rock concerts. With
yeah,
them, right?
and I remember like I was asking my mom, like, I want to see this. I want to see this. I want to see this. I couldn't tell you anything about it. I know our friends over at the Gray's Tap Room podcast ended up doing something with the Turtles recently, specifically to those concerts. Mm-hmm. But that was my first alternative media to the Turtles aside from the television show, the cartoon. I will agree with you, though. Those Ninja Turtle movies, though, those were fucking awesome. Number 1 and number 2 definitely are killer. I didn't really like the third one, and I don't remember what the third one was called. But the third one,
Turtles in Time.
Was it Turtles in Time?
It's, I believe,
because it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Secret of the Ooze, and then it was like in Japan or China or somewhere in Asia.
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't really like that one. I watched it. I've watched it several times because, that was our age group. But that's how I was introduced to it. And then, of course, from there, I got into the comics. And I'll tell you what, dude, the comics are a lot darker than any other media. And I like that a lot. Yeah. I like that a lot. And especially as I've aged, I appreciate the Ninja Turtles comics so much more.
Well, and we were wrong. It was only called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. But the slogan was "The Turtles are back," and then it says ... in time, because that was that time frame in the 90s where you had to have a slogan on a movie. Like one of my favorite ones ever was like Trimmers. It's like there's nothing under the sun but under the ground, and then ... right? Where they always put like a little Siskel and Ebert fucking bullshit slogan on there.
Right.
Yeah, Ninja Turtles 3 was actually the worst, and there's a few reasons why. They changed animatronic companies.
Mm-hmm.
They decided they were going to lower the budget, thinking that people would go regardless, even though a lot of people went and saw it. But like little things, like I don't know if you ever knew this, in the movies, the dots on their face are supposed to represent pimples.
Oh, see, I thought they were teenagers. Freckles. I thought they were freckles.
No, it's supposed to be acne because it's supposed to represent that they're teenagers, right? The whole point of teenage. And in that one, they had a lighter green complexion. They really went all for that because also the excuse later from the producers and stuff was they're a little bit older. So, of course, they have more acne because if you notice, they're skinnier and a little taller. Because I get so deep into the realm of like, Michelangelo is supposed to be 5'2" and Donatello is supposed to be 5'6", and they're all those little nuances, right, that happen. Like I have the Pizza Box Collector's Edition Blu-ray, where it has all the films in there, even the TMNT by the Weinstein brother Weinstein Company that they did, where it comes with all the special edition stuff, and it's pretty cool. But it explains all those little things, like the little points that you might not look into, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like I think you say it, and anybody from our generation knows what the fuck you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
which is what's enjoyable.
I agree.
Everybody has a turtle that they like. Everybody has like something that they can relate to with it. But I do agree that the comics are darker. And the funny thing is the comics got started based as a parody.
They were based as a parody. And it actually started. So funny thing. So you've got Laird and is it Friedman?
Eastman and Laird.
Eastman and Laird. Two buddies basically just started fucking around more or less with Turtles. And the Turtles not only were supposed to be a parody of Daredevil in some instances, but they also made irony out of the Ninja Turtles because turtles, in life, are, unless they're in water, are extremely slow. Their reflexes are extremely slow. And how do you authorize them, or how do you illustrate them to have this complete fast reflex ability to be able to do martial arts? And so it was done more or less as a joke. But then, of course, they adapted a lot of the Daredevil aspects to it, which I love, and I learned about later on in life, as I think you did as well.
Well, yeah, it's like, but even the little things you look into, like Daredevil's mentor is Stick. The Turtles' mentor is Splinter,
mm-hmm.
which is off of a stick. They all have red bandanas. They're in New York, Hell's Kitchen. Daredevil fights the hand. They fight the foot. Like, and there's a lot of those little things that are pretty cool that you get into. But one of my favorite things that people have never really thought of, and I don't know if you have, and it's been explained on the internet now, but yes, we all know they're named after Renaissance painters.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the most important things of the story is the weapons they have.
Yes.
So if you look at it based on how the characters are, if we can get into a little meta with them, is Leo is supposed to be a leader and show grace and empathy and that, but he has the most deadly weapon on the team.
Yep.
So his whole goal is to not kill people, but teach people how to lead and just fight a battle.
Well, and he has to act patient with the sword.
Right.
Yeah.
So also to lead with grace, right? Donatello gets handed the most simplistic weapon, a stick.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, he's the smartest and has to do that. Michelangelo's all over the place nutcase, and he gets the weapon that you can hurt yourself the most with and takes the most concentration.
Yep.
And then Raph gets a defensive weapon,
the size.
even though he's so offensive and fucking angry that he gets a weapon that all it's meant for. Size are not meant to do. Like, we always thought they were cool because they're pointy, thinking you stab things. They're meant to just block.
It's strictly a defensive style of weapon, right. which is very interesting. No, I knew about all of those as well.
The cool thing is, though, Raph fights with them, though, because they have 3 fingers in between his fingers. So he actually fights with size unlike they're meant to be, hence why we thought that way, because he holds them almost like Wolverine claws,
right?
When in reality, a human would hold them a different way.
Right.
But I mean, that's getting really deep into it. But I don't know. I love everything about the Turtles, whether it's a parody and it's a joke and it was meant as one thing to what it has became, what it has grown into. It also makes me sad, though, too, because it's one of those things like I reminisce over what I had and the past and what I grew up with. And will it ever be the same? And is it time for a change? These are conversations we're going to get into. But let's just start with this, B-word. I want you to rank your favorite turtle, like, and go in order. There's 4 of them. Rank the turtles and why.
So when I was a kid, I loved Donatello. Donatello was my favorite, but as I've gotten older, I identify a lot more with Raph, just because Raph is an angry motherfucker, and I feel like there's a lot of times that I'm an angry motherfucker. So I like Raph a lot now, but as I was a kid, Donatello was where it was at because he was always thoughtful. He was always the more intuitive or engineer, if you will, of the turtles. He was creative, but he had that mechanical aspect to him where he would just figure shit out. So I always liked Donatello. So again, Donatello when I was a kid, Raphael now. Next one hasn't changed. Mikey. I love Mikey. Mikey was always the jokester. He was always that carefree. Like, everybody had a friend that was like Mikey growing up, right? And so he liked pizza. He liked hanging out. He liked skating. He liked all that sort of stuff. So Mikey's definitely number 2. My number 4 has always been Leo. Like, I've never identified as Leo. And so that number 3 has always been interchangeable, whether it be when I was a kid, whether it be Raph, right? That's my number 3, or now Donatello is my number 3. But Leo was always my number 4. What about you?
For me, B-word, it's hard because I feel like my list has never changed, but it has, if that makes sense, in the sense that Mikey's always number 1. Mikey's the carefree party dude. I think as kids, we always loved him. He's great. I love Orange. I love the nunchucks. I just loved his attitude. I think he was the fan favorite forever. But the thing is about Mikey is every reiteration of the Turtles, even when he's changed, he's been my favorite. So whether it's The Last Ronin, which we're going to get into, whether it was the TMNT by the Weinstein Company, where, he has a job as a party coordinator and shows up and like a clown almost, whether the jokes he made in Ninja Turtles 1 and 2, I'm not going to count 3 because it's garbage. And even the video game, like, I thought his powers were the best, like the weapons he fought with. Nunchucks are fucking awesome. So Mikey's always going to be number 1. The only thing that did change is Raph is number 2. And there's a few reasons. One, I love the color red. I love the size. Like you, the older I got, the more I understood him, the angrier I got. But I want to go back to the movie that came out, TMNT, the animated film, where Raph was like the Knight Rider, where it was like the comics, where he was out fighting crime by himself because him and Leo got in a disagreement. And one of my favorite scenes ever with the Ninja Turtles was when him and Leo got in a fight and he almost stabs Leo in the face with a sai, even though they cut that out. I don't know if you're aware that they cut that scene out and they changed it, but they're fighting in the rain on a rooftop. And if you watch the deleted scene, he almost really stabs him in the face, and it's fucking epic. His attitude's the best. Mm-hmm. His demeanor's the best. Like, he was my favorite character in the sense, like, always he moved up above Donnie just because I relate to him more now.
Okay.
Donnie's number 3. Just the ingenuity. I thought he was always cool. I can never make him number 1 also because I had a little brother growing up and we were, 13 months apart. We're very close. And so I was always Mikey. He was always Donnie. As my brother jokes, he always was Donnie because he had the big stick and then he loves to yell that out to people. But, I always related to Donnie because I was a nerd for a long time. Like, growing up, I was the smart kid and stuff. And so I relate to that aspect. Leo sucks. Leo's the fucking worst.
Terrible.
I actually wish I could take Leo off the list and put Slash there, even though he's not really one of the turtles, because I think Leo is pretty lame. It's one of those things, like, he sounds like a bitch in live action movies. In the movie of TMNT where it's animated, he goes off to like South America to like fight people in the jungle by himself because he can't be a good leader. So he goes off on his own, which shows no leadership. He's just been my least favorite character forever. I hate that he has swords and can't use them. I understand because you need to tone it down for animation qualities. Because if you read the comics, he gets pretty violent with them. But he's just always been my least favorite character because I feel like he's always been the leader, but he doesn't lead anybody. Like, if you ever read all the stories or watch anything, like, he's never really leading. Like, he's just sort of there, and Splinter's just like, he's Splinter's goody two shoes that Splinter makes sure that people follow him.
Leo has always just been a bitch with his shell. He's not been my favorite character at all. He's always going to be number 4 in the ranking of those turtles. I'm going to kind of skip ahead here a little bit. You mentioned Slash, and I know that there's several new turtles, and I'm not nearly as familiar with the new turtles as you are. So let's kind of discuss some of those new turtles and go from there.
So to get into this, we actually have to get into the comic series, which one of the series that came out recently was called The Last Ronin, which was an amazing series. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. And it's continuing. And essentially in that, spoiler alert, all the turtles die. And you don't know who the last Ronin is. And the whole story is to figure out who is fighting for the last turtle, like, to get through this. Another spoiler, it's Mikey. Mikey's the last turtle, and he eventually dies too. And Casey Jones and April O'Neil get married. They have a daughter named Casey, and they end up raising the new turtles. And the new turtles just came out. And the cool thing is all their names are based on the number 1 to show 1 unit. And so we have Moja, Uno, Odin, and Yi. And Moja is Swahili, Uno is Spanish, Odin is Russian, and Yi is Chinese. And if I'm pronouncing those a little wrong, I'm sorry, but these are the new turtles that came out. And the cool thing is they're a little bit more descriptive and distinctive. And what I mean by that is the way we saw the turtles growing up is they had different color bandanas, and they only did it in the cartoon to differentiate them, and they had different weapons. This time, I mean, we have a snapping turtle, a big black like turtle. And I mean, they're all different races, but like one of them has paint all over her to differentiate herself with markings. They just introduced them, so I haven't gotten deep into the comic yet. I'm not finding them as endearing, and there's a few reasons why. One, they're all babies still. So it's that infant state. It'd be like if they started the comic through the ooze and you had to watch them grow up instead of just being teenagers, right? Which is what we start with, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These are essentially baby turtles, like baby Muppets, and we're going to go through the comics and watch them grow. And so I don't know right now in the story if they're making it so some have too much of an attitude or too little of an attitude, or they're building on it, or if it's already written or anything. As of right now, Odin's my favorite. He's sort of a little bit of a badass. And then I like Moja. The other ones, I can sort of take or leave, but I can see the importance of the team. But I'm interested in how this story is going to go. But it was interesting to see how, I mean, we've seen this in comics all the time, B-Word, where you can start over and you can kill something off and make it new. And does it work? Does it fail? Because I mean, the Ninja Turtles years ago, I don't know if you knew this, introduced a 5th turtle.
And that was
Venus.
Venus.
A female. Yeah, Venus. Well, no, that was in the TV show. And then we had
Jenica?
Yes, Jenica. And that was the comic one. And that one was fucking epic. But it was one of those things, it didn't resonate with fans. And so I think for them it was, let's start all over. Like, let's end the last Ronin, and instead of starting the Ninja Turtles over again, let's actually start the Ninja Turtles over again, if that makes more sense. Like, let's have them be all new turtles and have the families continue and build and see what we can do. And so it is interesting. I will say The Last Ronin is probably one of my favorite comic series ever by them. It was weird because when I was reading it, I was like, where's this going to go and how's it going to end? And they're going to die, and you're sad about it, but it was a great story to follow. I'm excited for them. It's one of those things I would like to see where this goes and if you could build off of it. But the other side of me is like, I want my turtles back.
Yeah.
I want my original turtles. I don't want them to go anywhere. Like, I want them to be forever. Right.
Yeah. I hear you on that.
So now that we know the new turtles and we've been introduced to them, the ones named after one in the comic, are you excited for them? Like, could you fucking care less? Like, what do you think?
Honestly, I don't much care, to be honest with you. And I think the reason why I don't much care is because I'm still biased toward the original four. And I have a reason for this. I mean, obviously it's what I was first introduced to, right? But number two, it's also what's familiar. Like, I like learning new storylines, but if you're going to get rid of all of the characters that I'm familiar with, that just takes away all of it for me, if that makes sense. And so with that, I would like to know where the storyline goes. Like, I'll probably watch from afar, you know what I mean? But it's probably not going to be something that I'm into. I always go back to, we're spoiled in a sense that we were introduced to them in such a digestible manner, where all of the different turtles had the different colors and they had the different weapons and they had the different personalities. Whereas that's not how they were originally intended to be introduced, if that makes sense. And so for us, we got this very digestible version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I appreciate what they're trying to do in this new mode of creating new turtles, but it's still something that's so foreign to me. And it seems like it's just a little bit more complicated. So it is going to require more following, if that makes sense. It is going to require more reading up on it, watching the material, all that sort of stuff in order to get more familiar with these new turtles.
Yeah, and I could see that. I think for us especially, unless you're like, I'm a diehard fan, and I think we can establish that, but I'm not diehard where I'm going to follow everything blindly.
Yeah,
I'm still going to keep checking it out and seeing where it goes. I have favorite series, favorite turtles, favorite adaptations, all those on the gamut. I'm interested where this is going to go, but I'm still not fully invested. I was, and the main reason is I was more invested because it was the end of the Ronin series, which I thought was fucking epic. And so it's like, okay, I got to read it to continue that.
Can I just make a comparison here?
Okay.
Because I kind of feel like it's when Marvel, let's say, you have all these superheroes that form the Avengers, as an example, or whatever we want to call it. And all of a sudden they kill everybody and they create new heroes that you're not familiar with. Like, these heroes very well could be fucking awesome, right? They could have great storylines, great personalities, all this sort of stuff. It's just so unfamiliar that for me as a fan of the work itself, I have a really hard time getting past the death and the no longer there of the characters that I fell in love with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. That totally makes sense. I guess if we can get into, cause you did skip ahead. I mean, and what you were saying is we're going to get into these new turtles, but let's go through some differences between the comic and the cartoon that you know.
So first and foremost, the comic, as we've talked about already, everybody had a red colored bandana. There wasn't a personality of every turtle. Like, we have Mikey, who's this ADHD kind of, turtle who loves to party and loves pizza. That's not the same in the comics. You had Leonardo, who's the leader. Like, that was never really communicated in the comics. You have Donnie, who's this, he's mechanically inclined. He's very smart. Like, that was never really illustrated in the comics. Like, you basically had these four turtles and their backstory of the ooze, right? And you had the history of Splinter coming upon these turtles, and all of that is canon. All of that's normal. The main difference for me is with the comics and all of the other media that's out there is that there wasn't really a separation in the initial iteration of the comics, there wasn't a separation of personalities, of traits, of anything like that between the four turtles whatsoever. And that's probably the one thing that's very interesting to me. I do think from a creative perspective, however, the marketing team was fantastic in implementing that. And as it's gone through other media, you see that the colors have remained, and the personalities to a certain extent has remained. And I like where they're going with that. But the big thing, that's the biggest thing for me that is much different in the comics than other media, is that there just wasn't enough individuality communicated through the different storyboards, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It's funny how we always reference back to the red bandanas, right? Because if you look at the comics, they're essentially black and white. The only thing they would ever color every now and then was the bandanas. So that is always an interesting point to me that we all know. But if you actually look at them, it's like, well, how did you know? A few things that I always found interesting is, one, the turtles in the comics have tails.
Yeah.
And they don't in the comic. Now, mind you, or I mean in the cartoon. But the funny thing is if you notice, though, too, it almost looks like a sharp tail or a sharp shell. So that might be different.
Yep.
Some other key points I would say is the mutagen, right? From TCRI, which in Ninja Turtles 2, they called it TGRI. And I can't remember the main reasons. I think there was some marketing problems with copyrights and stuff, hence why Toka and Razor exist. Because originally they wanted to do Slash, but they weren't allowed to get away with it. So their roundabout way was to make 2 new characters. Because I think they wanted to do Bebop and Rocksteady, but either, and I don't remember if it was Laird or Eastman hated him.
Yeah, I think it was a copyright issue.
It was,
if I remember correctly.
But also, one of the creators hates Bebop and Rocksteady because they were essentially created only for the cartoon and to sell toys. And if you look at the toys, which we'll get into in a little bit, all the characters were animals because they were made to sell toys. They were like, okay, we need more animal characters. Because if you read it, the comics, it's essentially Splinter and it's the Turtles, and that's about it. And then later in the years, you get other ones, but essentially it was just them. Another big difference in the cartoon, I don't know if you noticed, Splinter was Yoshi, and he mutates into a rat. However, that's not the case. They fixed it. They retconned it in the original movie where Splinter was the rat, and then he had the same mutagen, and then grew. A funny thing in the comic though is that Shredder's Shredder's the main cause they get hit with the mutagen.
Correct.
And so it's all those little nuances that I enjoy that you find, like there's small differences. You have to change things every now and then. Some of it was for marketing, as you said. Some of it was to make it easier for children to understand. But the other thing is, like, the other one is mainly they don't fight robots. They fight actual humans. No. They kill them.
Yeah.
Mikey is not a surfer dude in the comics. He's more serious. He's more of a troublemaker. He pisses everybody off most of the time. It's like it's more that he's that pissed off teenager that's always having to be led. And so when I made fun of Leo earlier, I guess I can retroact that back saying that I don't mind him in the comics because he's actually more of a leader there, but I still think he sucks. But I'll say that he is better in the comics than he is anywhere else in other media.
Well, and the one thing that I'll say too, specific to the comics, I mean, we've already talked about the Daredevil influences, right? Daredevil is a very, very dark comic book. It is not a bright... It's not Superman. Like, let's put it that way. Like, it's not this positive light in a world that's just looking for something, to celebrate. Daredevil is a very, very dark comic book. The storylines in there are very mature. It talks a lot about different things that affect people on multiple levels that impact people, that you don't always get that happy ending, right? Like we've always talked about, do you like a happy ending? Do you like a real ending? Daredevil doesn't always give the happy ending. And although a parody of the Daredevil comic book, it had a lot of the same influences. It was still very dark. The comic books were still very, very mature. Like I said, from a marketing team perspective, when you start talking about the comic books, or I'm sorry, the cartoon and other media, movies and toys and all that sort of stuff, what a genius thing for them to do to start creating these teenage personalities with different identifiable traits. Because for us growing up, I don't know that we would have fell in love with the Ninja Turtles in the same manner that we did if it would have been exact to the comic.
No, but that shows the genius too. Like, we can sit here all day and shit on new cartoons and stuff, no matter how they are. I mean, the song was great. You watch it, it's campy and corny, but they did a good job. I mean, even the voices were great. I love that Corey Feldman is Donatello in the original film. It's something you don't think of. But I mean, the animatronics were great. I mean, the cartoon, everything. The toys were marketed right. But they introduced characters that they needed too. They would do short films. They would do everything that they needed to do to get the product pushed out. I want to take a break. because I feel like we're going to get heavy into some other stuff going forward. And when we come back, I figure we could talk about the upcoming film, some of the toys that we might have had growing up, and a few other things. So we'll be right back.
Hey, you there! Do you like podcasts?
Are you tired of the bullshit?
Well, this is not the podcast for you.
Actually, it is, and we are
The
Lords of Swine.
We discuss nerd culture, and we drop every Tuesday
on any platform.
We're literally everywhere.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for sticking with us through the break. Jake, we've been talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and obviously we're both excited to see this new movie, or to see the content of this new movie come out. And we'll get into that in here in just a little bit. But reflecting back upon a lot of the media that's been out about Ninja Turtles so far, and when I say media, I'm not talking about the marketing for this film. I'm talking about the different properties that we've been able to see, whether those are the original cartoon, whether those are the original movies, the new animated films or newer animated properties, whether those be the shows or the movies. And also they had the Transformers take on the Ninja Turtles there for a little bit with Megan Fox in it, which, side note, Megan Fox used to have Brian tattooed on her hip, and it was like having my own little parking spot there for a minute. But, MGK, it's all yours now. So it got me thinking, man, what is the best adaptation, in your opinion, of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Like, which one's your favorite?
I can't say the comics because I haven't followed them forever, and there's so many different iterations. I can't say the original cartoon, even though that was originally how I was introduced, right? And because, like I said, when you watch it back, it's a little campy and stuff. I will say the original film is probably the best adaptation we've ever had. Mind you, it has its flaws. Like, nothing is perfect, right? Like, one, no offense, April O'Neil in that movie, pretty unforgettable. Like, bad casting. Yeah. Like, I mean, decent actress, but you know what I mean? Like it sucked, like, because when Megan Fox came in, you're like, oh, yes, please. Like, that's all you think of, right? But TMNT, the animated film, regardless of the storyline, telling the story of the Turtles was the best adaptation, in the sense of you really flushed out more of the characters. Mind you, we've already been introduced to them, so it's almost like cheating, like we move forward. So I would actually say TMNT is the best iteration we've ever gotten, because you got Raph to really be Raph and be on his own. You got Leo to really learn how to be a leader. You got Mikey being himself and then helping bring the team together, and Donnie doing his thing. I will say this, the worst besides TMNT 3, let's just eliminate that, is the newer movies. In the sense, I mean, those started with a train wreck. Mirage Studios, originally when Peter Bay announced that he was going to make them aliens, and that threw a fucking wrench. Michael Bay, sorry. They were going to do them as aliens. They were going to, and that got some, it was overly CGI. You really tried to revamp the characters too much. Like, when you do too much with too little, like Leo looked like the only one that was actually a ninja, and then the rest of them looked like, what the fuck just happened? Like,
looked like rocks with
it's just
shells on.
They looked like WWE wrestlers that you put CGI around and made them fight. And I couldn't even get through Out of the Shadows with Cowboy or Bebop and Rocksteady. It was such a bad teenage film that I had to turn it off.
So a couple things. You mentioned WWE. The best iteration of the Shredder was in
Super Shredder with Kevin Nash.
Yeah, with Kevin Nash, straight up. And actually, the Celtic Warrior, what is his name? The redheaded ginger wrestler?
I don't know.
Oh, anyway, I think he was a Ninja Turtle too.
Okay.
Anyway, long story short, best adaptation for me, honestly, I struggle between the very first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and TMNT. Jake, I don't watch much anime or animation or anything like that, but I did go to TMNT with my daughter, and I had a blast. It was a great film. It was an excellent film. And I think if you're looking from a backstory perspective to a certain extent, or at least a character profile between the different turtles, I think that was done very, very well. But I think for me, just from a nostalgia purpose, I have to go with the 1990 or 1991 Turtles movie, that the very first one, when you had Raph sitting there, was it Raph that was crying when Leo was in it was Leo crying when Raph was in the tub.
Yeah.
And, Raph is just trying to get out of that coma or whatever he's in. That, to me, by the way, best Casey Jones ever was in that movie. So I've got to do. I think I got to choose the very first live action movie. I think that's going to be the one that I'm going to go with. Very close second is TMNT.
As a kid, did you like Ninja Turtles 2 though, or 1 better?
As a kid, I loved 2 better.
See, that was the argument. Like, I loved the opening scene where they're fighting in the toy store. What's his name? The pizza delivery boy. I thought was he was awesome. Yeah. But and just Toka and Razor. I mean, the whole thing with the professor and they're in the subway.
If that would have been Bebop and Rocksteady, would you have liked those characters better?
No, because I think they needed to be dumb in the sense to make the story better. And Bebop and Rocksteady are dumb. However, Toka and Razor didn't talk at all. They were essentially like when Shredder comes out, babies, they're babies. Like, I love that scene because it made the story flow better. And I don't think if we would have got Bebop and Rocksteady talking, like, how do you explain that more? So actually, I think it was a blessing that they couldn't be. Plus, in the comics later, Toka and Razor are badass. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
Right.
But I just thought, I thought it was great. Like, even in the sense where they did the donut thing for him, right? And they put the mutagen in the ice cubes and they're burping all over and putting CO2. You can't do that with Bebop and Rocksteady. I mean, you could, but would it have worked out the same? Also, let's look at it this way. You have a snapping turtle and a dog, right? You do the donut mutagen. Let's get really into this. And then you do the CO2 down their throat while Vanilla Ice is singing. Now all you have is a rhino. Like, still a fucking rhino and a warthog. Yeah. Like, that nightclub is still fucked up. Like, at least with a dog, like, it could be a solid point. Right. Like, what are you going to do? Like, oh, we still have a black rhino here. What do we fucking, like, you know what I mean? And so that's what I always thought about too. Like, how do you fix that? Super Shredder was badass.
Super Shredder was amazing.
I thought it was so great when he's under the pier and he's fighting them. Because here's the best part. The other reason that's great storytelling, the Turtles couldn't fight Super Shredder. He ends up killing himself, and they just stand there in fear, and the movie ends. Like, or, I mean, it shows that
until he crawls out.
Yeah, they still didn't need to do anything though. Like, he essentially just does it to himself instead of them actually fighting to get the shit kicked out of him.
Right. So and I'm just going to say it because it's not something that I don't think can be disputed. Were the best toys from the movies.
The best toys were when we were growing up and we'd follow the cartoons.
The cartoons, not the movies.
The cartoon toys are better than the movie toys.
The one thing from the cartoon that I absolutely love was the bus.
Okay.
The turtle bus was amazing.
Yeah.
That was awesome. But the turtles themselves, I loved the turtle toys from the movies more than I loved the cartoons.
Why?
Because they felt so it was okay. So when you got Hot Wheels as a kid, right?
Yeah.
They had those plastic wheels, right?
Yeah.
But then there were certain Hot Wheels that had rubber wheels.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you're like, holy shit, these are rubber. These are like real tires,
so
right?
You wanted the real rubberized turtle.
There was a difference with those movie toys because they felt real. They weren't just plastic. I mean, they were probably plastic, but it felt, it was much different. It felt more real, I guess, than the cartoon ones. And so I really enjoyed those.
See, I didn't get into it like that. Like, I guess if I looked at it as an adult, I would like NECA toys better because they do such a great job with like the realized. Mm-hmm. Like, I still have in my office, I don't know if it's a Funko, but like Aaron Yap bought me a collectible vinyl like Michelangelo from Japan. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I have it in a box on my shelf. But I loved like the fun nuances of all the toys. Like, I had a lot of them. I remember that was the thing when we went to Ace Hardware in Pahrump. And I'd go with our friend that I grew up with in first grade called Stephen Pope. And him and his mom would always buy him one. So I loved when I go stay the night at his house because she would buy me one because, they weren't cheap either. Toys were not cheap.
No.
And so I got a lot of them that way. But I don't know. I will say this. I could rank my favorite toys. I don't know if you can.
No, I can't.
But if I did, I would have 2 honorable mentions, and they'd be toys I never got. And the first one would be the Turtle Blimp. I think the Turtle Blimp was the shit. It was fucking awesome. I thought it was so cool. It was in the cartoon. Like, it was one of those things like I never got. And the second one would be the bus. I never had the Turtle Bus. And my dream car for a long time, you know me because I'm weird, was I always wanted to buy a Volkswagen van and fix it up to be the Turtle van.
That would have been epic.
And like, I wanted to take out the middle seats and put computer chairs like mounted in there so you could spin while you drive with seatbelts connected to them. Like, I wanted all the weird shit in that. And I wanted to paint a Volkswagen van like that. And I thought it would be epic. But those were the 2 I never had. But the cool thing is like the one thing I enjoyed about those toys were you had different versions of Mikey. You had different versions of Raph. You had different versions of all these characters. And then you had all these new characters that came out. And the cool thing was sometimes they would make the toy and then they'd show up in the cartoon or vice versa. So like if I looked at like my number one is Bullseye, which was made from a made-for-TV Ninja Turtle film where they needed to make 2 new characters. And so there was a mole, like a giant mole, and I don't remember if his name was Digger or whatever, and then a bull. And what happened was Bebop and Rocksteady got a hold of a mutagen ray, and Shredder had them show up, and they accidentally shot in a barn, and they ended up hitting like a gopher mole and a bull, and Bullseye got created, and I thought he was awesome, and he was one of the first toys I ever got, so I always will remember him. The next one would be Mondo Gecko. I thought Mondo Gecko was one of the coolest characters ever as a toy and as a cartoon character because he was fun. He was like the epitome of Mikey, but a lizard. That was also during the time when Gecko clothing was big.
Oh, I remember Gecko clothing. Dude, those pants were amazing, bro.
They were the shit.
Oh my gosh.
But Mondo Gecko came with a skateboard. He had the tongue hanging out. He was a little crazy looking. He had a roller skate on his tail. He had a helmet, and he was a fun character. Surfer Mikey would be number 3, which I think almost everybody had a Surfer Mikey. And that's where he had the squid on his shoulder, and he was dressed up because that was that cool toy. Like that was the epitome of Mikey. The next one would be Samurai Raph.
Oh, I had that one.
And that's another one that almost everybody had, but he was awesome because it was badass Raph, right? And then 5 would be Slash, and because one of my other favorite thing about the toys, B-word, is you got the character, right? Mm-hmm. And they would be all cool and all colorized and everything, and then they'd have a weapon, and the weapon was the most basic beige tan you ever had. Like, look at Leonardo's swords. They're like an orange tan, and everybody's weapon. None of the weapons worked. None of them were great. Like if you ever had Mikey, he had the nunchucks and it had that thin piece of plastic between the two, and they always broke.
Break. Yep.
And they sucked. The worst toy, I'll say this, there was, I don't know if it was Raph or Mikey that I had, but they had, remember back in the day, zip ties. Remember zip tie toys? Where you pull the zip tie through and it would start like a crank and they would do it?
Yeah.
They had a turtle version where there was a sewer like grate on the back of them and you pulled a zip tie through it and they would say things. And that was the most god awful turtle ever because it was so fucking big. I don't know how they got away with it because the shipping on that must have been a bitch. But the motor on it would go out and it never sounded like it. It would be like, it sucked. I hated that fucking toy.
I will agree with a lot of your list actually. But I will tell you, you missed out on that TMNT bus, bro. Like I had Batman in that thing. I had fucking Superman in that thing. I had Power Rangers in that thing. Mm-hmm. Like it was badass, dude. Like it was absolutely awesome. Speaking of toys, can we talk about how fat of an ass April O'Neil had, bro?
Fat titties too, dude.
Dude,
her titties were so good.
That yellow suit that she wore was so form fitting. It was unreal, dude. It was like the man in the yellow hat from Curious George. Just, oh yeah, dude.
The monkey was staring at tits all day. It's fucking epic.
So with that, dude, who are the best side characters in the TMNT franchise?
My favorite one ever is Usagi, the rabbit. And so Usagi is actually from his own comic, and they've crossed over so many times because it was one of those things as an anamorphic rat or rabbit. So of course, like, why not team him up? He's a Japanese samurai, and they eventually introduced him into the cartoons. They introduced him into all the shows and everything. I think it would be cool if he was ever introduced to a movie properly. But one of the coolest characters they've ever introduced. But I guess if I looked at it, I would do top 3, and it would be him. The next one would be a side character because I can't name character. I can't name main characters like Shredder or April O'Neil or Spinner. I don't think they count. But the next one I think would be Slash, and I know we talked about him a lot tonight, but it's one of those things like he's always had a soft spot in my heart because I mean the story of Slash is pretty tragic too, like why he carries around that little palm tree because I don't know if you know this, that was the tree in his like terrarium that he grew up with.
Oh, okay.
And so that's why he always has that. And so like, it's like a binky for him. And then I guess the next one would be Casey Jones. I know I'm saying not a main character, but I mean, out of all of them, who has not always had the greatest story, who could be a main character, but also just a side character. He's sort of like you can't have the Ninja Turtles without Shredder, right?
Mhm.
But you can't have the Ninja Turtles without Casey Jones, essentially.
That's true.
And so you can't have him without April O'Neil. You can't have him without Splinter. So Casey Jones is number 3 for me because he is a main, but he's not. And I think his storyline's fucking cool. I mean, you got a guy in a hockey mask that comes up with all the weapons. Like the first movie, like you said, is the best one because also he plays cricket. He has every thing in his wheelhouse, not just a hockey stick and a hockey mask.
Right.
I wish he was more violent, like in Bat in the Sun when they had Casey Jones fight, which was fucking epic.
Yeah.
But those would be mine. Who are yours?
Ace Duck. I loved Ace Duck.
Really?
Yeah, maybe I just like ducks. Who knows?
Oh no, that's a Jake thing.
I always thought that Ace Duck was just really cool. I don't know why. Wingnut, and I'm actually really excited that Wingnut's in the new movie because I thought that Wingnut was really cool. He's the bat, the mutant bat guy. And then the other one on my list was Casey Jones. And again, for everything that you said, I think Casey Jones is one of the most underrated characters in the TMNT franchise. I would love to see Casey Jones team up outside of TMNT with so many other comic characters that it would just be badass. Like, could you imagine like actual Daredevil teaming up with Casey Jones? Like how badass those fight scenes would be. So yeah, Casey Jones for sure. But I always liked Krang though. Like Krang was always a cool character. Like I never had any toys or anything with him in that. And honestly, Krang reminds me of MODOK. Like
Krang reminds me of MODOK, but the one thing I hate is his sex doll counterpart. Like if you think about it nowadays, it's essentially you put your brain inside of something and controlled it for the rest of the night. Like your guts deep in a giant inflatable thing trying to have a life, right? Because I also hated how you knew it was a suit, but you didn't know it was a suit. Because if you watch the cartoon, sometimes it's like, it makes noises and does things, but you're like, how?
Right.
I don't think Krang could ever be done.
It's like if Zordon had a case that walked.
Yeah. I don't think it can ever be done properly. I mean, let's say it this way. Which villain would you like to be adapted into a live action?
What's the scientist's name?
Baxter Stockman. That's mine.
Yes.
The Fly.
Yeah.
He seems like the parody of the Lizard Man. Spider-Man.
Very much so from Spider-Man.
Right.
Yeah. I think that would be a really killer character to put in there. I think that there was plans to do that initially in the reboot. Like I always call it the Transformers version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because that's exactly what it felt like. Like you had Michael Bay and you had Megan Fox, and it was so stupid.
Well, the problem was Tyler Perry was Baxter Stockman in the Shadows.
Yeah.
And it was like they made everything a joke. Like I also hated how Shredder looked. It was like you have a character that you don't need to do CGI with. So what do? You make him have a whole CGI suit and make him look horrible.
It's absolutely stupid.
Like why? I don't know. I mean, going back to though, when you were talking about the toys and Daredevil maybe fighting with people, one of the biggest missed opportunities that was halfway good was when and you don't watch a lot of these, but DC a couple years ago released Batman versus the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, no, I heard about that one. Yeah.
So here's the thing about that. That is a cream pie dream come true for all of us nerds, right? I mean, you have Batman and you have it, but here, and the main reason is the scene where Batman fights the Ninja Turtles is cool, but the scene where Shredder and now I'm forgetting his name, but who was Ra's al Ghul. The scene where Ra's al Ghul and Shredder meet up and talk about how they're going to take over city and fight is probably one of the fucking coolest.
Really?
It's one of those you're like, holy, like you never think of it, right? Like you think of Batman and the Ninja Turtles and you don't think of like the two main guys, right?
Right.
And you see them. The problem with that, going into spoilers again, is the Joker's involved, which nothing wrong with the Joker. Harley Quinn's involved. And then all of a sudden the Joker turns into like a snake and Harley Quinn turns into a dog. Because they get a hold of a mutagen ray and everybody starts turning into giant animals like Ninja Turtles and it gets weird. And it's like, you had such a great premise. The Ninja Turtles show up in Gotham by accident to fight Shredder because he shows up there. Batman's like, who the fuck are these guys? And kicks the shit out of all four turtles. Splinter has to show up and talk to fucking Alfred and Bruce Wayne to calm it down. Ra's al Ghul and Shredder are teaming up but fucking hate each other. So they're fighting and helping each other at the same time. And you're like, this is awesome. And then it goes to that and you're like, it's like you started writing something and didn't know how to finish it. And it's like, if you could do that as live action, but fix it, holy shit, that would be amazing. But it'll never happen.
The Turtles crossed over with the Power Rangers, and that was one of the stupidest crossovers ever. And you know, as they continue to make new properties, and this will transition us into the next topic. As they continue to make new properties, I kind of feel like they don't bank on the Turtles they do, but they always try to look for a crossover opportunity, if that makes sense. This new movie coming up is it, dude. I'm not one of those people that likes to watch cartoons. This one actually looks really fucking good to me. What was your first impression of the preview?
I don't know. This is weird for me. I don't know how I feel. There's a lot going through because one, when I heard this was announced and Seth Rogen was doing it, I was like, okay, you could have some justice. Then I found out it was animated, and I was like, do I need another animated film? Like, I loved Into the Spider-Verse, and I get it, and I understand this new age of animation, but
I'm glad you brought up Into the Spider-Verse because that's exactly what it looks like from an animation standpoint.
Yeah, it just looks, but it looks more like if you mixed, Lakai Studios, who did Coraline and stuff like that, almost stop motion clay CGI mixed with like the artistic, like shell shading cartoon of Spider-Verse. It looks interesting. The way I'm going to put it is this: I don't mind that you revamp characters to make them different, but I also get sick of you revamping characters to make them different to fit the norm of today. Give me the characters I know and love and make it right. Like, why do you have to change everything? Like, the way the Turtles talk, it's like they're trying to make them even more teenage-esque and going. I understand they're trying to get them through those growing up years, but it's almost going to come across as annoying to me. It reminds me of when Marvel Studios released Miss Marvel, where it's like, it's not for my demographic. Like, this is not for me, this Ninja Turtle film. I hope for the best. I hope they do a good job. The difference is, I mean, it could be amazing. I could be wrong. But I guess when I watch some of these previews, I'm already excited for the sequel, if that makes sense. Like when mind you, Robert Pattinson's Batman came out, right? Like when the trailer came out, I was like, this is going to be the best Batman ever. I was all hyped. But I was already thinking, like, who's the next villain going to be in the next film? With this, I'm not like, what's the next film? I'm already like, can we please try to get through this one? And that's rare for me with comic films. I guess we're spoiled because we're used to what's next, even though we haven't seen it. I don't see the build off, and I'm not as excited. I know, because it feels to me like you're doing a Ninja Turtle film because you have to. Like, we all need one, right? Like, it's one of those. It's one of those
you lose it or you use it or you lose it type of franchise.
They have to keep making it, right? They have to keep making it to keep it alive and keep trying.
Selling toys, yeah.
But two, you're introducing every fucking character that we've always had again. Like, I'm not saying I need a brand new story with new people and everything, but do I really need to see Bebop and Rocksteady again? Do I really need to see all the, you know what I mean? Like, give me something almost new and fresh with a character that I know, but almost like a different storyline. It's like when they make a Batman film. If you made a Batman film every time with the fucking Joker, how bored do you get?
Oh,
like, we've talked about it. Yeah, we've talked about it. Like, we're done with Batman films. Like,
but
do we need another one?
There's a few things that I truly appreciate in this, and I really hope that actually one of them happens, okay? It doesn't appear that there's a Shredder in it, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally fine not having a Shredder in this. Shredder can be the orchestrator behind the scenes, kind of like this big bad that you're continually working up toward. I think that would be a really good move for TMNT to move forward. I don't see Casey Jones. Maybe he's introduced at the end. Maybe he's introduced that way. And if you look at the ages of everybody, like even April O'Neil, she's a teenager in this. She's I don't even know what her age range would be, but it's young, right? So maybe Casey Jones is brought in as they age, and I would be okay with that too. Although I really would like to see Casey Jones. I love what they did with April, and there's a whole internet community that hates what they're doing with April, and I think it stems from a few things. I think it stems from, you know, the fact that the Little Mermaid is now, it looks like she's mixed race. I don't want to call her black, but mixed race with the red hair. And there's a lot of people that are saying, oh, you tainted the Little Mermaid. She's a fictional character. What does it matter? And then there's people that are getting pissed off that Tinkerbell's mixed race in this new Peter Pan, which, by the way, looks fucking phenomenal if you haven't seen it. I don't care about stuff like that. Now, if you took Harriet Tubman and you made her white, right, or George Washington and you made him black, like, okay, these are real people. Like, I understand changing the race, but April O'Neil was originally a mixed race character based off of one. I don't remember which writer it was, his girlfriend or fiance or whatever she was at the time. And they ended up making her white through the process with the red hair. Like, she did not have that. And so for this particular iteration, I actually really enjoy it. I think it's something that I'm pretty excited about.
I agree with you. I don't mind that. I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound bad because I don't mean it like this, but I'll ask you this to defend those people that are getting mad about it. Not that they're correct, because they're wrong. Who fucking cares? Get over it. It's a fictional character. I agree with you. However, if Black Panther was white, how do you feel?
I wouldn't like a Black Panther being white.
Okay. So I guess it goes to the case of like a character that you've known and loved forever. Now, mind you, any Ninja Turtle fan that came up and wanted to argue with me that April O'Neil has been their favorite character is maybe there's one or two out there, but in reality, they're going to name a turtle before they name her.
Right.
So shut up. My problem with April O'Neil is I feel like it's going to be a character. I don't feel like it's going to be April O'Neil, and not because of the mixed race thing or anything. What I mean by that is that she's going to be every teenage character that we've seen in every comic book film in the last 15 years, in the sense that she's going to be over the top, have those storylines where she sort of saves the day, leads the thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, in the sense of, it's not April O'Neil. You've essentially made a character that acts out of the ordinary of the character you made. I can give a shit if she's black, white, red, pink, purple, a dude, anything, right? But when you make them act like every other cookie cutter character in films or genres like this, that's where I fall out of love with it. Because to me, if you watch that trailer, it feels like what the MCU's been pumping out with a lot of side characters. So for a perfect example, WandaVision. What's Kat Dennings' character's name? It's almost
Agatha.
It's not Agatha. No, Kat Dennings.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's essentially, you got to look at it like it's the spunky, over the tops, got the good jokes, gonna be, you know what I mean, in your face. Like, I just feel like it's been done too many times. Instead of just giving me who April O'Neil is, I'd rather you give me that character than give me a character that you've been developing in every other fucking movie for a while.
I think I look at this a little bit different, dude, because I don't look at this necessarily from my fandom. Like, if we're going to define my fandom, we're looking back at that 1991 first live action Ninja Turtle movie. That's where I fell in love with this franchise. If you take a look at this generation, they're not going to look back at that movie and watch anything of it because of the visuals, because of the storytelling, because of the writing, because of the animatronics, because of anything like that. It's just not something that they're going to watch. That's why they don't watch Howard the Duck. That's why they don't watch these other properties that we love, right?
Right.
For this generation, my hope is that this revitalizes the Ninja Turtles. And I think that in the manner that they're doing it, making it a modern approach, you see a lot of the social media aspects, a lot of today's societal stuff, as far as technology and whatever are all involved. I would love to see that this creates a new generation of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans, and I would love to see a good storytelling behind it. And so for that reason, I'm very excited to see it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I could be wrong. I'm usually wrong when I have an opinion before a movie comes out based on a trailer. That I've proven myself that multiple times. I'm going to see it. I'm excited for a lot of things of it. I'm in that weird scenario where I want something new, but I want something of the same. You know, that weird nostalgic like aspect of like, please give me something I'm familiar with, but please give me something new.
So real quick, to just end the show, to button this up, quick paragraph, something like that. If you were to remake the Ninja Turtles, you're in charge of it.
Okay.
What's the overall tone and what direction are you taking it?
I finally want to do the dark film that HBO promised years ago where they kill people and it's like as gritty as possible. Like, I would love it if it was even like the Turtle series comic, one of my favorite ones, where they're actually just like fucking turtles and they don't have weapons and they just slash and bash and all that. I mean, it's dark and gritty. I think that would be fun. I don't want it to be a horror film like the Winnie the Pooh thing. I want it to give me the tone of the comic and make it. I think as fanboys, when we grow up, we want a rated R Batman film. We want a rated R Spawn. We want a rated R Daredevil. We want those push me to the limit, because I've seen the child action. I've had the toys. I've seen April O'Neil with the big tits. I've seen the April O'Neil be a bimbo. I've seen Megan Fox, April O'Neil. I've seen the funny, campy cowabunga jokes. Give me a real fucking hardcore, gritty turtle where they're actually using their weapons and they showcase that. That would be for me.
I would agree with you. I would want the dark take. I would want mature storylines. It doesn't need to be a porn and it doesn't need to be a slasher, but I would love to see where they have this really dark approach to the storyline, where you have characters almost, whether it's a movie or like an HBO Max series, something of the nature where it's just this really dark, gritty, at times bloody, a lot of language, that sort of stuff. I would love to see that, just because I'm a lot more mature than when I first was introduced, and I would like to see that maturity escalated in the storyline. So with that, man, what do you got for me?
Thanks for all the dirty talk. Come back, get sanitized. This is Jake from the Bleach Bros Podcast, and thank you for listening to today's episode. I want to bring to your attention our Linktree. Visit Linktree/Bleach Bros Podcast for access to all of our socials, merch, and streaming sites. Linktree is linktr.ee/Bleach Bros Podcast, all one word. And if you enjoy our content, make sure to give us a like, give us a review on whatever platform you are listening on, and also invite your friends.